Hey everybody, go blue. I'm back. Michigan defeats Alabama and is headed to the national championship game. We're going to dive through it all with Tony Altimore next on a special episode of Michigan Wolverines Live. And welcome in, everybody, to the show. Special Friday episode, Friday, January 5th, 2024. My name is John D'Adamo, and I'm going to be taking you through the next hour or so here at the Michigan channel, the Voice of College Football, and the main channel at the Voice of College Football, and the Mark Rogers X Twitter account. So we're in lots of places right now. But here we go. Do recommend everybody hit the like button. Subscribe, share with a friend, send this link out to the universe, to your Discords, to your social media, to your Facebook groups, everywhere. Let's get this thing really ramped up here because we've got a lot to talk about. And if you have a comment or question, I strongly recommend you send a super chat. I'm going to try to get to comments, but it may or may not happen. We'll see. We've got a lot to cover. So send a super chat and you'll definitely get your question or comment read on screen. Without further ado, we have our special guest here who hosted the Pac-12 chat show live this season, and brings a really good holistic perspective to college football. And a friend of the show and my friend Tony Altimore is here joining us. Tony,
hail! Great to be here. Hail to the victors, guys.
It feels unreal, and I had to wear my Woodson jersey for obvious reasons.
As one
bring it all full circle.
So I will tell you, here's a little thing. Here's a little Woodson moment. So I grew up in Michigan. I was actually at the Rose Bowl for the last national championship.
Wow!
And my good friend, my very good friend, like from growing up, Casey Beidel. If you guys are Wolverine soccer fans, I think she was like an All-American or something and went on to play pro soccer, was with me at that Rose Bowl. And I just saw she and her wife are on their way to Houston right now for the national championship game. So whatever those 97 vibes, from our like 18-year-old selves that she can bring, she will be bringing there to Houston for you.
I've been talking about it, and obviously I've been under the weather, so people have been asking me, "Are you going to go?" And apparently, you're looking at $1,000, which that's not terrible, but when you have that plus tonsillitis, we'll have to just watch it on the big screen. But that's
18-year-old me convinced some really nice, I didn't have a ticket at the Rose Bowl for the Washington State Michigan National Championship game, and convinced some very nice girl working the gate to just let me slip in like the third quarter. So I just got into the stadium, and then my friend and I ended up on the field. We snuck in through the band as the band was coming down onto the field of the Rose Bowl, and we got to stay until they caught us doing cartwheels on the rows in the middle of the field. And one of the security guys was like, "You probably don't have a pass, do you?" We were like,
"Yeah, that's a top guess there, top detective skills."
It was great. They were cool about it. Michigan had just won the national championship, so it was all good.
And you bring up a good point, and I think that's a good place to begin. So obviously you're here to talk Washington, Pac-12, but did want to just kind of wrap up on what we've been talking about on the post-game show. And since I missed Tuesday, Mark Rogers, Voice of College Football, took my place, and obviously who better? But I definitely wanted to just ask you, because you're the historian of us, and so with this win, so many narratives were shattered. Right? Michigan can't win the postseason. Michigan can't win against the SEC. Michigan can't win a playoff game. All of that got shattered with an overtime thriller against Alabama. Do you think that for the program, do you think that this is the most important win since '97?
It may be. There's a couple of great wins there after that, and I forget the exact years. What was it? Was it the 2000 maybe Orange Bowl?
Yeah, against Alabama.
A few of those games under Coach Carr that were huge wins.
They were.
But this was the game where Michigan came in. People kind of expected them to lose, and they found a way to win. I mean, it helps that Alabama was unable to snap the ball more than 3 centimeters off the ground. I don't know what was going on with that.
Yeah,
We'll take it.
Their center was a little off. Let's just say.
We'll take it. But I'll tell you what I was worried about in that game. So my very first Michigan game that I ever went to, I don't know, I was a fifth grader or whatever, was the Michigan-Florida State game. When which you guys probably won't remember, when Bobby Bowden was number 1, Michigan was number 4, and it was the ascension of Florida State. It was probably the first game where it was, a lot of people believe historically it's the game where Florida State declared itself to be part of the national scene. And Florida State just came into Michigan with Desmond Howard playing and beat the living snot out of Michigan. I don't know, 55-30. It could have been 150. I mean, with how that Florida State team played. And so, this was a chance for Michigan to take one of those games where people kind of expected them to lose and win, and they did. They found a way to win. I mean, your game against TCU last year, and we can talk more about this in terms of Washington, because in a lot of ways, I think that Washington has a little bit of TCU flavor this year. But I mean, you think about your game against TCU last year, everything went wrong. Unless you are a Big 12 fan, there's no question Michigan was the better team last year in that game. And if we were 2,500 years older, we would be making up like Greek mythology about and Michigan angered the gods, and so they made JJ fall and threw pick sixes, and just, the guy who was in the end zone and then wasn't, just all the ridiculousness, comedy of errors. Yeah. And somehow you lost that game that you should have won. And so you found a way to win that here. But the big question for Washington, I mean, I think, and we'll talk more about this, Michigan, I think, is the better team. Washington's have that magic TCU pixie dust. Is it going to run out? So we'll find out. But yeah, as far as this win, I mean, to win the national championship here, I think would be just enormous for the program. But I would also argue that and people can be mad at me for this, I would say your biggest win really since that Rose Bowl game was the beating of Ohio State in the snow.
That was great. I mean,
that was a moment where you were like, okay, we're taking this monkey off our back and whisking it away. Yeah. And that I think was huge. This is probably that next step.
Yeah, and it begins with the defense, and this was the biggest shock of the entire thing for me. Was
if USC was able to play any kind of defense, Washington wouldn't be here. Let me tell you that. One tackle. That was all we needed. One tackle.
But
Michigan's defense
actually, we saw the 2021 Georgia playoff game, right? Where Michigan got bullied around by Georgia. There were times in the first half, Tony, where Michigan, and especially its interior defensive line, was actually bullying Alabama. Storied Alabama. And that, to me, showed an ascension of the program.
Storied Alabama almost lost to Central Florida.
That's fair, yeah.
And Auburn.
Tyler Buckner and Simpson.
Yeah, and I mean, rivalry games, anything can happen, but a terrible Auburn team, an atrocious Auburn team, essentially beat them sans one play. So, they were, to be honest, be glad you weren't playing Georgia. And I mean, I know all the Georgia people in the comments are going to be like, oh, what if? And, if wishes were dishes, we'd have a full set. But Georgia might be better than Alabama. Don't tell anybody.
They look good. And I will say the offense, while Alabama's defense did a great job, in my view, in the middle, especially in the third quarter, the offense made plays when it counted the most, right? They had pre-snap motion going on, especially the first couple of plays in the first half, and then late in the fourth, and especially in overtime. The pre-snap motion was, and the huddling, Nick Saban actually admitted this, I believe it was to Pat McAfee, on the Pat McAfee show, and he gave credit to Michigan for confusing Alabama and like taking them off rhythm where they couldn't really detect what was going on. So Sharon Moore and his play design
Great coach.
at times was really what needed to happen against Alabama.
I agree. I mean, they again, like you said, they made plays when it counted. And that's what you have to do. I mean, you compare that to Washington, right? Who had that game won and almost blew it. So,
Yeah.
Michigan was kind of the opposite. I mean, the defense, the defense really came through for Michigan in such a good way. You always make that cliche like defense wins championships, but as my dad one time said, like, hey, if they can't score, we can't lose.
And hey, the other silver lining is special teams nowhere to go but up.
Well,
so
true for like this entire playoff. Like, just oh my god, there were some moments, but I mean, the thing is the great teams find a way to overcome those moments. I mean, you had those moments when you had them last year with the picks. It's not special teams, but the pick sixes and the goal line fumbles, and those things happen. And they happen against really great teams because really great teams are sort of making them happen often. I mean, that's the thing that people don't always get when you think about like fumbles and screw ups and stuff like that. People don't give enough credit to the fact that when two great teams are playing, the great teams make the foibles happen.
Absolutely. And so leaders and best awards I'm awarding for the coaches. We've got, of course, Jim Harbaugh, Sharon Moore, Jesse Minner, but somebody who doesn't get his kudos enough, Ben Herbert, strength and conditioning coach. Okay. I had an interview, Tony, for another project I was doing aside from Voice of College Football with freshman tight end Zach Marshall. And he was talking to me about how ingrained Ben Herbert is. Basically, so Zach Marshall reports to his tight ends coach, but he also reports to Ben Herbert kind of simultaneously, calls him Herb. And it's very much like every day you put in the work, and you can't half-ass anything because they're gonna. Not only is Herbert going to get you, but the other your team is going to get you, like to basically get you back up. So Ben Herbert and what he's done the last few years, strength and conditioning, I think needs to have a Leaders and Best award and to talk about for a minute because it really has. I think that's we can talk about Signgate, we can talk about whatever but having a top tier strength and conditioning coach, as Ohio State fans know with Mickey Marotti, when Mickey Marotti came in. And they toughened up a lot under Urban. Same thing here. And Mike Hart as well. Running backs, obviously Blake Corum, turning Khalil Mullings from a linebacker into a running back. Just some of the things that he's been able to do, top notch.
Yeah, I mean they've all done great stuff. It was a fantastic game. And the thing that I love about it too is it was a game worthy of the Rose Bowl. I mean, that was the thing. It was a game where it was two great teams. I mean, the essence of blue blood versus blue blood. I was reading a couple of writers talking about it, and they said one of the differences between this game was that for 3.5, it was Richard from Sports Illustrated was talking about it. He said one of the from Split Zone Duo podcast, he was saying one of the differences is, he said, you go to the Orange Bowl or the Sugar, and there's people milling about and there's stuff. But he said this was for 3.5 hours. You had 95,000 people locked into this game. They were here for what was on the field, and it absolutely delivered, as the Rose Bowl does. I mean, I know, I've been to 6 Rose Bowls now, and it is an enchanting, magical place that is unlike anything else. I've been to Orange Bowls, I've been to World Series, I've been all kinds of these games, but there's nothing like the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I can't wait.
And my dad says it was like that in the '60s when he played.
I can't wait to go over there. Visit UCLA and Michigan.
Okay, that's not the Rose Bowl. That's in the Rose Bowl Stadium.
Well, yeah, but still,
Okay, wait. Can I
I
tell
want
you
to
my favorite
experience
line
the
from a
stadium.
Northwestern fan?
Yeah.
A Northwestern fan asked a UCLA fan on one of my Twitter threads. He said, "So when we play you guys, do you have enough tarps, or should we bring some of our own from home?" Anyway, I loved it. Sorry, Bruins. Sorry, Bruins.
Yeah, and also USC will be another good one to go to.
That'll be a fun game.
Absolutely. Players.
Fight on.
So 3 specific players and then some entireties, right? So JJ McCarthy, quarterback, did what he needed to do in clutch moments. 3 touchdowns. He did very, very well. Obviously, Alabama's defense was able to adjust in the third quarter as the
And they're
greatest of all
good. They're
time.
Alabama's defense. Like that, he played like he needed to play.
Right. Blake Corum, I thought he had himself a great game. And they put him in the right positions, right? They got him out in space. They got him out in the flat to just run a route and doing misdirection with Carson Barnhart as well to do blocks and things like that. They really got creative, and Blake Corum was able to really play to his strengths, and obviously made a clutch play touchdown, to help get drive Michigan to win the game. So Blake, Roman Wilson also had a really incredible catch that was literally his fingertips, or it would have been intercepted,
Yeah,
and he was able to
that
catch
was
that ball. It was so close. I had to give it to him just for that, because that saved, an embarrassing. Well, there were a couple of people who saved us from an embarrassing ending, but that was definitely one of them. The O line, which we've been worried about, obviously with Zinner going down at right guard. I think Sharon Moore putting Carson Barnhart at right guard, Trente Jones at right tackle, and then obviously the rest of that position group, they really gelled. And I thought they did a great job of protecting JJ, limiting pressure as much as they could. And I had to give it to the entire defense. I couldn't there were so many players who made plays that needed to happen. Key tackles, key moments in that game, and just that pass rush with McGregor. 6 sacks on Milrow. That's insane. Anytime you have 6 sacks, probably not going to win the game. It was very impressive.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And they did what they had to do, rose to the occasion in the big game. And that I think was and I mean, and the other thing too is they sort of got a bit of a monkey off their back, because I mean the joke for 50 years has been Michigan goes and loses the Rose Bowl. So, getting that monkey off their back was a good thing. I've been to plenty of them. I've cheered as it happened. But getting that monkey off their back is a nice win too.
Absolutely. And before we get to what you all came here for, the Washington deep dive, we do want to remind everybody, when you're doing your shopping on Amazon, click the links and Mark Rogers can get a couple of bucks. And what's wrong with that? We're all doing our shopping and our New Year's and everything else. And so go ahead and do that for us. We would really appreciate that. Hit the like button. If you haven't joined our Patreon or YouTube membership yet, we strongly recommend that. And by the way, we have some new merch, including dog bowls, including puzzles, including Voice College Football socks. There's all kinds of merch going on right now. So check it out if you haven't already. There's something for the whole family, friends, neighbors, everything. Okay, here we go. So coming up this Monday, 7:45 p.m. Eastern kickoff. I just saw that. It's been reported a couple places. So if you're waiting, 7:45 p.m. Eastern. So that way you skip through all the fluff, the beginning, set your alarm right for there. You'll get to kickoff right away. Michigan favored by 4.5 versus number 2 Washington. And before we get to really diving in these two teams, I had a big picture topic I wanted to pick your brain about, Tony.
All right.
Because we've heard all season from various people that star rating recruiting was the end all be all of what makes a good team. And we talked about all the different teams in the past, the Georgias, the Alabamas, with the stockpile of 5 stars. But in this national championship game, we have a grand total of 2 5 stars in combined, and it's JJ and Will Johnson. That's it. So, Tony, do you think that with NIL and transfer portal and all of these things that are happening now to entice players to stay for player development, do you think we're seeing a bit of a changing of the tide, so to speak, or a turning of it? Or do you think this is kind of just a fluke year for the national championship?
Well, I think there's a little bit, a couple of, this is just my personal opinion. I think there's a couple of different things going on. The first one is, by the way, those people that do those talent rankings are not all-seeing gods. They don't always know exactly how good these kids are. I mean, how many, 5-star, how many Tate Martells are there of the world? And so, are they hit or miss? Yeah, they're hit or miss. They miss some, they hit on some. So, you kind of have to look at, like, talent also evolves. One of the things that I think is an issue sort of in this era of these star ratings, right, is, they pick these kids at like 14 and they knight them at age 14 and then they rise from there. You think about a kid, like, let's look at Jackson Dart, who was he won the Gatorade like National Player of the Year, but really didn't take off until his senior year. And so people poo-pooed him. Kid should have been a 5-star. He was Gatorade National Player of the Year. But they poo-pooed it because they all had their eyes on, the kids that they had anointed at age 14. The 7-on-7 camp with 14-year-olds. So I do take with a grain of salt those rankings. But what the transfer portal era and the NIL era lets us do, I believe, is it lets us kind of narrow things out. Now, if you go back, by the way, nothing is new in college football. So when we think about, like, oh my gosh, it's taking talent away from the big teams, Darrell Royal and Bo Schembechler and Tom Osborne, John McKay. John McKay supposedly used to just fill up the USC football team with anybody he was afraid UCLA might get. Bo Schembechler did the same thing. Darrell Royal did the same thing. Tom Osborne had like 800 walk-ons. So, the idea that the talent is now kind of leaking out of some of these broader programs is exactly the same discussion they had when they said you have to go from unlimited scholarships or whatever they were to 85. And also, by the way, college used to be a lot cheaper. So, for example, the University of California was free. So it was easier to, get kids to come. So none of this is new, that talent is sort of democratizing a little bit. And I think that that's a really good thing. And what the transfer portal era lets you do is it lets you take kids and move them around, maybe find a better situation. I mean, a lot of these kids, whatever it is, whether it's scheme, whether it's coaching, whether it's whatever. And, sometimes whether it's a football player, whether it's us in a new job, whether it's a dating relationship, whatever, sometimes you just need to start over. And so you look at a guy like Michael Penix Jr., look at Bo Nix, you just to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to get out of there. I'm going to go to somewhere new. We're going to sort of start over. We're going to reset. It's maybe a better fit. And you get that opportunity. And I think that is a really, kind of a good thing that we have going on right now. It also lets teams fill holes more quickly. It let USC fill the hole with Jordan Addison, that you got Caleb Williams, you got the pieces that you needed. But I think there is very much something to be said for, having that talent. Now, you can debate whether, Jim Harbaugh's evaluation of talent is better than that random guy in a basement who assigns star ratings for fill in the website. Again, I don't know. Is Jim Harbaugh a better evaluator of talent, or is that guy? Different people may have different opinions. I'll be honest. It's a flip a coin. But I mean, you have that question because there are coaches who can do that and who can look and be like, okay, that's what I need on my team. I need that kind of kid. I need that guy. I mean, we looked at, you see, I'll tell you this as a USC alum, who we've had some phenomenally, quote, talented guys who didn't work out. Right now, we're looking at 5-star quarterbacks going to the G5s. Why are they going to the G5s? Because maybe they weren't as good. I mean, look at USC right now, for example, where Miller Moss, sent the 5-star packing essentially. Now, Miller Moss was people forget, by the way, Miller Moss is not Miller Moss is he's like a student leader, beloved member of the fraternity, all this stuff. But people forget he was a high 4-star, like one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the country would come out of high school. We act like he came out of nowhere. He did not come out of nowhere. But that kind of talent end, I think, is something that is changing, is democratizing.
Yeah, and so I think scouting and like going beyond just using 247 as a shopping list and actually like looking at somebody like a Josiah Stewart from Coastal Carolina, who made incredible play in the Bama game, and like that's the type of thing. Like maybe without that play, maybe it's Alabama versus Washington. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like I think that there's just recruiting and star ranking is a data point. It will be a data point, and I respect that data point. But I'm glad that we're coming to a realization now with this national championship matchup that there may be more to it.
Well, and also, and I mean, PFF does some of this too, right? But like, what you are at 18 is not who you are at 22 after 3 years of nurturing and grooming and all that. That just there's a difference for those kids that I think is huge and is underestimated. Oh, he was a 5-star, maybe, but this kid got better. This kid got taller. This kid got bigger. This kid got slower. This kid never really healed from an injury. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on in there that I think really change that.
Absolutely. So neither of these teams, Tony, have been to the national championship game in the CFP era. Obviously, Washington did go in 2016, I believe, against Alabama. Kind of got stomped a little bit. And then, of course, Michigan has been twice before and embarrassed by Georgia. And then the disappointing TCU. That clown show. Also, I want to, so the last national championship then was before the national championship game even happened. So 97 Michigan, 91 Washington. So what do you think that means? I mean, just from like looking at this game, somebody is going to win their first natty in 3 decades.
I think it's good for the sport. The national championship should be won by more than 5 teams, and so I think it's good for the sport that one of these teams is gonna win it. I mean, both, and let's remember some folks who are younger may not understand, like, and as a Trojan, I don't necessarily like this, but the way the old Pac-12 used to work was that, and I'm trying to think if the Big Ten doesn't really kind of have this sort of mindset. But Washington ran the North and USC ran the South, almost like a Game of Thrones style. You've got like the Lannisters and the Starks or whatever, and they both kind of rule their little fiefdoms, and it works out. It works. Sort of works. That's how it was. But then, Washington spent so far down. They had their probation in the 90s. They struggled with ups and downs. They had their winless year. So having Washington back is good for the sport, I think. Same with Michigan. Having Michigan back is good for the sport. You're also talking about, and people will tell me that this doesn't matter, but I think it does. You're talking about 2 great universities. I mean, these are world-class great universities. Washington, by the way, those of you guys who follow global rankings, Washington is like above Princeton in the global rankings. Washington is an outstanding university. I have exes from there. I have friends from there. I've been on their campus. It is a beautiful place. It is what, especially when the cherry blossoms are going. It's one of the most stunning places I've ever been in my life. It's gorgeous. Michigan, obviously a great school. They both have huge healthcare systems, huge hospitals. I've said this for John probably knows it. Some of you guys may not know. I've said for years, Washington is probably the most Big Ten like school that wasn't in the Big Ten. And I don't know if you guys remember on Mark's show, the day USC and UCLA joined the Big Ten, I said I would expect Washington will join. I was surprised they didn't take Washington at the time, because Washington is a very Big Ten-ish school. I mean, and they've got the dog, and they've got the band and the tradition, and it's a great place. And so I think having having both these two schools together here really creates a win-win for the sport. It creates a win-win for the conference. I wish it was SC instead of Washington, but I think it's a good thing overall for the conference and the sport.
So Tony, for those who are Michigan Wolverines watching, obviously it's Michigan Wolverines live. So we try to understand when we think of teams to compare 2023 Washington to. It's very difficult to do that when you have a Big Ten schedule where it's very heavy on top level defenses, but then you have offenses that are struggling, right? I had to go back to 2022 Ohio State. Yeah. I had to go back to 2022 Ohio State. And Tony, what happened, as you probably remember, there was a thing called 2020, and Harbaugh won 2 games.
I remember. You guys forget, I'm from Michigan, so I'm watching this. People think of me as the USC person, but I'm from Michigan. I'm watching this. I'm like, oh, that was not good.
And he calls his brother. He takes a 50% pay cut. He calls his brother, and he says, hey, can you help me out? I can give one, and he says, I can give you Mike McDonald, or I can give you Jesse Minter. Okay, I'm going to pick Mike McDonald. So Mike McDonald comes to Michigan and gets rid of the one-trick pony, Dr. Blitz, and it turns into a 4-3 multiple defense where it's a Ravens-style defense that's built to beat a team like an Ohio State with a high-octane pass. That's kind of like a hybrid air raid, pseudo air raid.
Having a terrible defense and then bringing someone in with a Harbaugh style defense. Who would do? Oh wait, USC just did that. Okay, sorry.
There it is. There.
Go on. Yeah, no, I think that's actually a pretty good analogy. One of the differences though is that Washington has probably, no offense to Texas, I don't think Washington has faced a team like Michigan yet. I mean, USC Washington game, guys, you could take like 7-on-0. It was, like a 7-on-7. Well, imagine a 7-on-0. Like 2 tackles in that whole game, I think, that were made. Washington had, 8,000 yards of offense. Alex Grinch got fired the next day. Or day and a half later. No, it was the next day. It was the next morning. It was a sad display when USC played, but they've had these games back and forth. They haven't played a great defense like yours. They've played offenses that were better than yours. But they have not played a defense like yours, and they're not perfect. However, they are enchanted. So I think much like TCU last year, they remind me a lot more than anything else of TCU last year, where they have big plays. They're going to hit you with explosives. Adunze is going to do his thing. The other receivers are going to do their thing. Dylan Johnson, I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know what's going on with him. They've heard different things, but he's a great running back. So they have explosive plays they can make. But they haven't played a defense like yours that can stop those explosive plays, as you've shown against Ohio State. I think as you showed against Alabama. So the question is, do they have that magic pixie dust like TCU did? Because they've had it so far. I mean, I talked about a good friend of mine who 4-year letter winner in track from there, and every week he'd be like, we got lucky again. And at a certain point, you're lucky 13-0. Again, pretty much like TCU last year. So many games they should have. I mean, this Washington team should have lost to ASU, which I don't know if you guys know this. Washington hasn't won in the desert since 2001.
Wow.
2001 is the last time they won in the desert, and they should have lost at home to Arizona. They are cursed against Arizona State.
We're talking like Pokemon, Tamagotchis.
Oh, like on like some little chain battery powered thing. That's the area. So yeah, I mean, we're talking like the Clinton administration here is when they last won in the desert. So it's just I guess it would have been the first Bush administration. Yeah. The World Trade Center was probably still up. I don't know what date the game was, but it's just a different. So, they should have lost to ASU. If USC had made, 2 tackles in the whole game, we might have won. There's a bunch of different games that they should have lost to Wazoo. They should have lost. A lot of people think they should have lost to Oregon twice. but they find a way to win. And those teams, by the way, are dangerous. Those teams that just find a way to win. Like I haven't watched a Michigan game this year. I guess the Alabama game. The Alabama game is really the first one where I thought you guys had to find a way to win, because you have a great team, and so you've just kind of continued to steamroll up. It wasn't no games were like down to the wire, like they had a bunch of games. So that for a team, it's both good or bad, because it's a recipe for, you could be the team to hit them like Georgia hit TCU last year and be like, okay, you're all done with that Cinderella pixie dust. Or, you could be like your game against TCU last year if they still have that magic enchantment.
It could go either way. And we're going to dive into it in six. I basically picked 6 different aspects, kind of carving up the stats and looking at these teams. But I want to make one caveat before we go through these 6, is that these are 2 diametrically opposed, basically, team philosophies. So it's very tough because there's no control mechanism. There's no constant. Washington's a high octane passing offense. Michigan's a pound the rock, old school Bo 80s, with some variations and some play action and things like that. But, it does make it a bit more difficult, to look at these 2. But so starting with coaching, Jim Harbaugh, Kalen DeBoer. First of all, before I go into it, I do have to say Kalen DeBoer and the coaching job that he's done to turn around a dumpster fire program, 4-8 program, and they've gone to 25-2 with a national title appearance. That might be one of the most impressive coaching turnarounds I've ever seen. There are very few like it that just happen that quickly and go to that level. Harbaugh kind of did it, but he went to 10 wins. He didn't go to the Natty.
But you know what Jen Cohen said when she hired him?
Yeah.
So people don't know. People weren't really paying any attention because Kalen DeBoer got hired, I think, the same day Lincoln Riley got hired. And so the media was focused on that, and it was kind of the opposite, because what Jen Cohen said she wanted for Washington, she knew they needed a heavy rebuild. And Jen Cohen, she was the Washington AD, she's now the USC AD, and she is amazing. But what she said is she wanted a coach who knew how to win as a head coach at all levels. And if you look at Kalen DeBoer, I mean, he went back to, I don't even know some of the, what are they, like, NAIA Division II school, worked his way up, at Indiana, and then took over for Tedford at Fresno. At Fresno was just winning like crazy. I mean, went down to the Rose Bowl and beat UCLA, and so Jen Cohen was like, I want a coach who's won, who knows how to win. It reminds me a little bit of like Indiana's new hire with Cignetti, like get a coach who knows how to win at every level. And brought him in, and he has just done amazing. So now, again, Washington has every advantage in the world. It's just like Michigan. It's a very big tennis
Starbucks
school. Like,
money,
all kinds of Boeing money, all kinds of money. Washington has gold money.
Yeah.
Washington. I don't know if you guys know that. All the skyscrapers in Seattle. Washington owns a whole bunch of them because they're built on their old campus from when they moved at like the turn of the century and still own downtown Seattle. Like the university district or whatever in downtown Seattle isn't where the school is, it's where the school was, and now the school owns all that. It's like, it's like we're talking like British, like Grosvenor money, kind of a thing that school has. So it's a school that just has every reason to win, and she helped, kind of re-enable that with hiring him and the people they put in place, the team they put in place. They got people from the transfer portal. And they did what they needed to do. So it's just Washington should win, and they are. But Kalen DeBoer was also sort of like the perfect person for them. He kind of embodied that spirit of the school. It reminds me a lot of kind of like how Pete Carroll. Like, you guys remember Pete Carroll like felt like USC, and I think Kalen DeBoer feels like Washington. Harbaugh feels like Michigan.
Absolutely. And, people are saying in chat, well, actually, Harbaugh has this record and DeBoer has this record. I took out everything except for the school that we're focusing on. And the reason is because Harbaugh's got NFL. He's got a couple other schools. DeBoer's got technically 3 national championships at the NIAA. It's very tough to like do this, so I just stuck to the one school that each of them have been representing, and done it that way. But
they're both
I have
doing
to
great.
say, Tony, and you may call me a homer for giving Harbaugh the advantage on this.
I mean, I'm from Michigan,
but
so I'm not.
but I'm giving this on this number one advantage Harbaugh at least slightly, and here's why. What we saw this season,
Connor Stallions. I'm just kidding.
Connor Stallions.
But
Harbaugh was out for 6 games, and the team continued to win.
Oh, not only the team continue to win. Let me tell you what I think is the masterful coaching job here. They somehow had a coach suspended for half the season for 2 different cheating situations, which, I mean, in both of them, you clearly did. Like, shamefully did. You did both of them. And somehow made yourselves the victim to where the Michigan is like the underdog. Oh, we're against the world. I'm like, you're not against the world. Like, what a brilliant coaching job. Brilliant motivation job. America's team. By what metric? I don't know, but it worked. Like, there is a masterful coaching job there. There's a unified team there. They're all about it. I mean, one of the things I love, and I don't know, is this a new thing at Michigan? I don't know. They call themselves, I don't know, Team 140, whatever they are. What number are they this year? The 140th team, 145th team. President Ono calls them that. There. Yeah, they all call it. But they're very unified in the idea of being a Michigan team. And so, I look at that and I'm like, this is a team that very focused on what they need to do. 144. That's what they are. Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's like to me, that's a really cool thing, because that's like the team doing that and the team calling themselves that, which they do. They're recognizing their place in Michigan history.
Absolutely. We do have our first super chat. Thank you to Ryan for your $9.99 super chat. Go Blue, get the job done, bring the pack in with a win. Okay.
I like it.
There you go.
Hey, the Big Ten wins either way.
Exactly. It's either current Big Ten or future Big Ten. Either way, the two are.
It's all Big Ten.
Gonna rematch in the Big Ten
all
next year.
As I told somebody today who was mouthing off at me, I said, no, the Pac-12 it's now down with a Titanic sub, imploded and gone. It's Big Ten from here on out.
Absolutely. The people in chat, we're gonna stay away from talking about we've talked about the Stallions thing like for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't trying to go there.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking about all the chat stuff going on. I mean, we can debate that. We could debate that for hours. But the quarterback battle. So, I think on first glance, people who may not be as ingrained in this would say, "Oh, well, Michael Penix, he's thrown for 100 bazillion yards. He's the definitive advantage here." But you look at JJ McCarthy, and again, this is where the systematic differences come into play. Penix doesn't have the same running game and the same offensive philosophy. It's a lot on him, right? He has 3 exceptional wide receivers. He's got to throw a lot of yards because he's got, I believe it's the 100th running offense in the country. So when you have the 100th running offense in the country, you've got to throw a lot.
Who, by the way, had one guy run for 250 yards against USC.
Well,
so if USC could tackle, they'd probably be the 120th.
You're definitely right.
They'd be the 120th.
So these two, obviously, I will give Penix every kudos for his passing ability. Some of the passes that he made against Texas, some of them were against wide open receivers, but some of them were tight windows, well defended, and he still found a way to get it in. We played him in 2020. We're bringing back 2020 again. When he was at Indiana, he did, I believe it was 350 and 3 touchdowns against Michigan and Don Brown's final year. And so, this is the second matchup, Penix versus Michigan. And his QBR is decent, 6th in the country, 35 touchdowns is awesome. But I want to talk about McCarthy's strengths too. So JJ McCarthy, keep in mind he was injured for 4 games, right? So he was working through an injury. He's dealing with a much more run heavy offense, but he can run the ball. He's got that dual threat capability, and he did go for 2,800 plus yards. He did go for 22 touchdowns, 4 picks, and because of the ability that he has, that's why he's third in the country for QBR, 89.5. He has the ability to run when he needs to make athletic plays that no other Michigan quarterback I've ever seen has made. The flea flicker in the Alabama game when he caught the ball with one hand and then quickly had to adjust before getting trucked to then chuck it over to Roman Wilson. Literally, if he wasn't one of the most athletic quarterbacks I've ever seen, that was Mahomes. That was a Patrick Mahomes-esque. Very few quarterbacks can do it. I'm calling this a push. I'm calling this a draw. I think they both have exceptional talents in different areas, and they're both going to have themselves one hell of a game. What's your take on the QBs?
So, I think Michael Penix is more talented just from a pure. I mean, Michael Penix is going to have a longer career on Sundays probably, but that's not everything it's about. So, I would say I would give the pure quarterback advantage to Michael Penix, but it's about running the ball. It's going to be about running the ball, and it's going to be about, can you complete those passes? Can you get the ball to those receivers? How covered are those receivers? How good is the Michigan defense going to be? I mean, remember, one of the things that Michael Penix played against some awful defenses. He played against some good defenses too. I mean, the Pac is not the mid 2000s Big 12, where you had those like every game was 48-48 or whatever. But he played against some good defenses, but I don't think he's really played against a defense on the caliber of Michigan yet. And so, when we think about I give the quarterback advantage to Washington, but I don't necessarily give the whole team advantage to Washington.
Yeah, that's a fair take. Yeah, and as we've said, the only way to win a national championship, Mark Rogers and I have talked about it on Michigan Wolverines Live before, you need to have good quarterback play. Penix and McCarthy, I think
both have elite quarterback play, I would say.
Yeah,
I would say JJ is going to play on Sunday. He just he may not play as many years or start as much, but he will have a great successful. I mean, again, these are great teams and great players. I think we're gonna have a great game.
Absolutely. So the next is kind of what we're gonna do now. These next couple, offense, defense, special teams. We're gonna start with overall each one, and then we're actually gonna look at the matchups against each other in terms of Washington's offense versus Michigan's defense, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to carve this up and look at the Pro Football Focus ratings for each piece. So offense, I was actually surprised Michigan was this highly ranked. You think of Michigan's offense, you think of run the ball, you think of light passing. But they're up there, and they've had some dynamic plays this season with play action, with rollouts. But Washington, as I expected, is a bit higher, third. And this also does speak to Michael Penix, because to have the 100th rushing offense in the country and to still come up third in Pro Football Focus is extremely impressive. And I think that's why we've got to really watch out for Michael Penix. So advantage Washington there, Tony.
I would agree with you, but I would also add two caveats to this, and I don't want to sound bad in both of these. And I'm including my beloved alma mater in one of them. Michigan played a lousy schedule of a lot of bad teams. So I think a little bit of what we think about in terms of Michigan's offense, maybe sometimes being a little more boring or run the ball, it's because they didn't have to. They were stomping on teams. And when you stomp on teams, you don't have to make heroic quarterback plays because you're winning, 48-10. And so there were a lot of games where I think it's not that Michigan couldn't be more high flying, but they didn't have to be. And so I kind of think that Michigan in some ways, this is going to sound really stupid for me to say, but I think it's true. In some ways, I think their stats may be a little padded, but I think their capabilities are underestimated because I think they can do more than they're getting credit for by some people.
Yeah, I would. The only thing I would say is like I don't think necessarily that Washington played a murderer's row either.
Well, no, that's what I was
Um,
just about to get to. Washington's
yeah,
offense is padded by playing some atrocious defenses as well.
right.
Just covering no one. I mean, and Michael Penix, great quarterback. I mean, he is exceptionally talented. But I mean, let's just pick on that SC game where like 0 tackles were made. If we were playing that game still, it would be 111 billion to 11 billion and 7. So, it was just those are, I think that both of those numbers in some ways are padded by bad defenses, but that is not shorting their capabilities. For both teams. Because I think they both kind of, again, Washington kind of had it because they were playing bad defenses. Michigan, I think, had it because they were just up a lot. And so, I think JJ can make plays. He just a lot of times hasn't had to. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, because Penn State, there were 2 attempts at passing. They did an RPO and he decided to run it, and then the other one got called back. So then they wound up just every recorded play was a run. So if you don't have to do it,
I mean, that's the
not?
thing is, it's not that they can't. It's that I think sometimes they haven't had to.
Real quick, 2 shout outs. This is my mother in chat here. So she Lady Lake Music, who also helped us get our intro song. So David Martinez.
Your intro song is good.
Thanks. So David Martinez donated our intro song, which was very exciting. And Rob, who also is part of the Lady Lake PR kind of world, is also here. So Rob is opening up a sports store actually. So
Cool.
It's very exciting.
Nice.
So very cool there.
All stars.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for being here. So here's the moment for Washington. So we've Pro Football Focus defense now. Michigan #1 versus Washington 37. And if you look at ESPN, FPI, it's 40 something. This is where, and you saw it in the Texas game, right in the playoff game. Texas like pounded the rock down their throat. They passed pretty much at will, and they almost won that game. And if it wasn't for that last play not happening, Texas would be here, not Washington. So,
I heard a rumor. Didn't they turn the last 2 minutes over to Cristobal to call the plays?
That it's very possible.
That's what I heard happened. They were Cristobaling. That too much Oregon somehow got that Cristobal juice into the juju into the Washington. No, I think you're absolutely right in here. Michigan has a tremendous defense. Big advantage, Michigan. Washington's defense has survived on I don't even want to call it a bend, don't break less than the other team. I mean, that's kind of what they've done a lot this season. They, again, found a way to win. They found a way to stop Bo Nix just enough to hit a field goal to win.
Right.
Three times, by the way, last year and through this year, 3 times they've beaten Bo Nix by a field goal. And so, that's the kind of thing where now Michigan, I don't think has done that. Michigan just stops people. And that's the kind of thing, could Washington can they hang in enough? Yeah, maybe. Will they? I don't know if I'd bet on that.
Yeah, whether you look at the interior D line, you look at Michigan with Chris Jenkins, you look at Mike Morris, you look at the secondary and the safeties, Will Johnson being able to match up against Marvin Harrison Jr. And actually get a pick off of Marvin Harrison Jr. going up one-on-one against each other. That's incredible. And so, yes, Washington has three, and give them all their kudos. Three exceptional top NFL level receivers, but it's not like Michigan hasn't faced maybe the best in football. So there's the fact that all of that kind of factors in, I think, to the number one ranking there. And Washington, Michigan could really have a field day as long as JJ stays disciplined. Michigan would really have a field day on Washington's defense.
They could. But again, are they going to have the pixie dust or not? I think Nick has a great point here, by the way.
Nick, thank you for coming by and contributing. A huge question is whether Washington's O-line can hold up for 4 quarters. I actually think they can. No one has been able to all year against Michigan, largely because it's really difficult when you have tremendous depth as they have on the D line. Washington's O-line is legit. I will say that.
They are. But so is Michigan, so is Michigan's D line. That's why it's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah. And we're going to go into, obviously, each other's offense versus each other's defense in a second to really dive in a little bit further. But I think it's going to come down to the interior D line going after Penix. So if you edge rush, Penix can get you by escaping and then doing magical things with his passing ability. If you go on the interior D line, he can't do it. He that's it, right? So I think it's really going to come down to it's going to be one of the toughest games that our D line has had in their career. Maybe the toughest to be able to stop Penix, but that's really, I think, the secret sauce here. Because even though Washington's O-line did win the Joe Moore Award this year, we also know that Joe Moore Award sometimes, Michigan won in 2021 and Georgia had their way with us, right? So, so I think interior D-line might be the top secret there. And here's where I'm going to give it to Washington, right? Special teams. And we saw it against Alabama, right? There were some special teams miscues. Although during the season, they in my mind, they were pretty solid in special teams. The Alabama game, I think, was rust. It was an aberration. They're probably going to make some adjustments, maybe put Roman Wilson as returner instead of Thaw or Samaj. They may mix that up a little bit, I think. I don't know. But Roman Wilson, I think, would be a great returner for this game. And he obviously has that speed to be able to maybe even get a score when returning. So I do give it to Washington, though. They just seem like they've got a lot more buttoned up on special teams.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. But at the same time, Michigan's, I think, are good enough. The question is Michigan going to make mistakes? I doubt it.
Yeah, Stan, I think you're probably right. Special teams was an anomaly. And the good news is they have a week to get it right. And now it's a little bit more like a traditional week to week instead of this big break. So Michigan's a lot more used to that, right? Now they can they can kind of go back to that formula of, okay, we had the game and now we have another game a week later. So they can kind of have that practice schedule and everything to get it right. I think you're right, Stan. I agree with you. And there's, like I said, there's nowhere to go but up. So I'm sure they'll make some adjustments and do that here. So we're gonna look at Washington's offense versus Michigan's defense, and so we'll start with the rushing offense versus the rushing defense. So like we said before, 100th in the country for Washington, 8th in the country for Michigan, and we do have a situation, obviously, where Dylan Johnson, who I think did very well for them in the Texas game, is injured. He's supposed to play, but I worry that it's going to be like when Blake Corum played in the Ohio State game in 2022. He said he was playing. He played 2 snaps because he couldn't. I don't think that Johnson's going to be as much of a factor in this game. I give the decisive advantage. Rush O versus D to Michigan in this one. What do you think, Tony?
I agree with you completely. Michigan's rushing defense is really good. The question is, can Washington's defense be good enough? Or can Washington's rushing offense be good enough They're not gonna be great, but can they be good enough that then Washington can do what they need to with, their nightmarish receivers and Michael Penix doing his like Archer move? The question is, can they be good enough? And I think we'll see.
So the backup is Will Nixon. So Will Nixon, kind of a hybrid running back wide receiver.
He's pretty good.
Redshirt sophomore, looks like. He's decent, but I don't know if he has that same big play ability. So if Johnson's kind of limited, he's gonna have to play. Because I foresee a lot of Nixon, and Johnson's going to try, but when you get injured like that, and we saw what happened, a week is not enough time, and I do not think he's going to be anywhere close to 100%. And here we go with obviously the passing offense, and even though it's 1-2. You've got to give it to Washington. Washington's passing offense is one of the best I've seen ever. It's really good. I think it might even be better than Ohio State 2022. Just with the ability of all three of them to make those plays. Whether it's Odunze, whether it's Polk, whether it's McMillan.
They're so scary good.
Odunze, Washington fans were telling me might even be better than MHJ. I don't know about that. That might be homerism a little. I think Martin Harrison Jr. is probably one of the best wide receivers we've seen in at least 3 years. He's that good, but because when he was out of the game, they looked like Iowa. So that's how much of an impact player he was. But number one in the country versus Michigan passing yards allowed, number 2. So could we see some interceptions from Will Johnson, Mikey Sanders, still Rod Moore? I think he might be good for 1 or 2 interceptions, but I still give the advantage to Washington.
Yeah, they're really good. They're really good. And again, because Michigan runs the ball so well, they haven't had to. They're very much the opposite. They haven't had to be that good, but these guys are lethal, but they tend to be lethal in explosives. So the question, if you can stop the explosives or score enough that the explosives don't really matter. I'm sure they're watching a lot of that USC. Again, this is a team that scored 50 some points on USC and scored 9 points on Arizona, or 15 points in Arizona State, and one with a pick 6, or so there's a lot more inconsistency. If they're on, they're on. If they're not on, they're beatable. It reminds me so much of your game against TCU. It could be like your game against TCU, or it could be you just roll them.
Sorry, Erica, don't hate me. I was rooting for you guys all season. But yeah, that was the closest. Ohio State scored 3 points.
Can I give a personal message to our friend of the show, Erica?
Yes.
Ding dong, the witch is gone. Yep. There is a new era in Iowa offense, and I just want to give a huge shout out to Beth Gates, who did what no man could do in the state of Iowa.
Hell yeah.
And in her first year as an interim said, we're all done with this Brian Ferentz mess. Boom, fired his butt. Decisively, there's badass leadership case studies to be written about how Beth Gates fired Brian Ferentz. So Iowa fans, go Hawks. Herky has been avenged.
Absolutely. Yeah, great job. So just to wrap up on passing offense, I do think that whereas I think Michigan has a lot of paths, and we'll get to this later, Washington, Penix has to be on it to win. Really, we're talking 400, 500 passing yards, lots of throwing. That's the path. That is the path. Michigan has 6. Washington, Penix has to be pretty much
perfect.
A baller, which, by the way, I think it's very possible that he will be, because of what we've seen so far. but that we'll kind of cover that more later. But definitely something to look at as far as the different pathways to victory. So, Tony, we do have Michigan offense versus Washington defense now, and so this I actually have a question mark and an exclamation mark here because I was a little surprised that Michigan had the advantage here. So Michigan has the 71st passing offense in the country because, as we know, they like to run the ball. But they do that. They have some great play action that they do to the tight ends, Colston Loveland. When Roman Wilson does get into it, he can run some great routes. He's taken a level up this year. Washington's passing yards allowed, I was absolutely flummoxed at this. 120th in the country. One of the last in the country.
Part of that is because I think their defense is not as good as a lot of other people think. Part of that is because they played some outstanding teams in the Pac-12. They really did. I mean, you look at they didn't play Colorado this year, did they? I don't think so. I think they had Colorado off, but they played USC. They played Oregon twice. They played Cam Ward. There's a lot of those Pac-12 teams that don't get enough credit for being as good as they are. I mean, they just played Quinn Ewers. So they have played some outstanding quarterbacks that, I'll be honest, are a lot better than anybody you guys have played.
Yeah.
That's not a rip on Michigan. Just that Washington has played probably 6 quarterbacks who are better than anybody you guys played.
Yeah, because think who was probably the best, Talia, or Kyle McCord. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Kyle McCord, who just got bounced to Syracuse. Now that's not a rip, because again, Michigan can stop people and does stop people. But looking at Washington has definitely been. Now, does that mean that they're more battle tested, or does that mean they're just not as good? Maybe both.
Absolutely. Calvin, the reason is because I was surprised. I didn't, and here's why. They go up against each other in practice, right? So Penix and the offense goes up against the defense in practice. So you would think that they would, have the ability to hone in. Okay, we have literally one of the best quarterbacks in college football. So they had all year to practice against the best of the best, and they're 120th. And so I think that's you would think that they'd be able to hone that a little bit more when you're going up against somebody like Michael Penix in practice. That's really why I was surprised. And it means, as we get to the keys to the game, it means that there might need to be a Purdue-esque or an approach where JJ is actually going to be slinging it a little bit. Which we've seen at times during Bama, at times during Ohio State, and then the early part of the season before he got injured. That may be a large part of the game plan to be able to beat Washington.
They can do it too.
Absolutely. So Michigan rushing offense, 61st in the country. Washington's rushing defense is actually not bad. According to the NCAA stats that I pulled. Advantage Washington with an asterisk. And I say this because of the eye test. I watched Texas run it down their throat. They had a problem, especially in the C gap. I was looking at the C gap.
I watched USC running on them, and that's not a good state of affairs, my friends. It's not a good state of affairs.
So the numbers say Washington, but eye test is a little bit more dubious. When you have problems in the O-line, like I said, I saw holes in the C gap often, but also just running up the middle to be able to just basically run at will. I think it was 6.8 yards per carry. Michigan could get 8 yards per carry. If Texas can get 6.8, Michigan could get 8 with Blake Corum. So I'm giving it an asterisk.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Their defense is not good. Their defense is not that good. The question is will they be good enough? Will they be good enough to offset what they're able to do on offense? Maybe. I agree with you on that.
John, where are you getting these stats? So most of the stats are coming from the official NCAA composite. You can literally just Google NCAA football stats. There's a drop down menu.
Stats.ncaa.org or .com or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's com. And you have the drop down where you can literally pull every single one for this. We also did get some from Pro Football Focus as well.
That NCAA site, you guys, if you're data dorks, like, is awesome. I randomly just pulled a baseball thing from there and like made a silly slide on Twitter today, and it got just directly from the NCAA data, and it has like 1,000 likes, like 400,000 views or something. NCAA data is amazing. So just, yeah, you can just pull cool stuff from there and people love it.
We got a couple more super chats. So sorry, Nick, I did miss this one. Forgive me. Penix on throws under pressure completes 44.4%. I believe JJ's 56 or somewhere in the high 50s. So that's interesting. So
you're both good.
Like I said, interior D-line pressure and edge too, but interior D-line, because where you don't got to know where to go if that happens, and it happens quickly. Thank you, Nick, for that. Ryan, if Michigan can stay on schedule with the run game and the D can get key stops, that's game. Yeah. I mean, yeah, got to stop Penix at least a couple times or hold him to a field goal. So definitely spot on there.
Ryan, I think you're totally right on that.
And then Keith, $10. I'm on a crusade to establish potential vice talent. But Bama and Texas had far more potential. UM and UW have more on-field talent. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah. And then we saw what happened. Yeah, they proved it on the field, and Bama and Texas had the stars. And, sometimes it works out that way. All right.
Well, the other thing I would add is those were two great games.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Any of those four teams could have won. There was no stomping in either of those games. So even I think you were looking at four really great teams playing each other. I mean, I think you could add Georgia, could have been another one, and could have done some similar things in there. And you really, at least I feel like Mizzou looked really good. So that there's a lot of these teams that could have been really good. And one of the things, like we talked about earlier, we're seeing a little more democratization of talent. I think it's good for the game, and both these teams have a lot of talent, and one of them is about to be the next national champion.
That's right. And it's very exciting. First time since either 91 or 97. And now we put it all together, Tony. Keys to the game and predictions. And so, like I said, I think Washington has literally won. If Penix absolutely just crushes it, goes for 500, and their defense
is good
does enough to just contain, maybe get a pick, maybe get just keep them to a couple of field goals. Michigan has staggered at times when faced, even with not so great defense. They sometimes will sputter and get off rhythm. So that to me is the one key for Washington. Is there one that I might be missing?
No, I mean, I think that's it. The question is for Washington, their offense has to be lights out. They've got to get those explosive plays. They've got to have those, 60-yard touchdown passes that, Michigan can't stop. And their defense has to get stops. They need to get probably turnovers. I mean, this is a game I think turnovers are going to be key in. If you can get a couple of picks, grab a fumble, do whatever, turnovers could determine this game. But the question is, can Washington do lights out and be just good enough on defense to make it happen?
Sergeant Pickles. We got one of our
Sergeant Pickles, friend of the show, gets a dubs up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sergeant Pickles. I can't do it since I'm rooting for Michigan this time, but we always appreciate you supporting all of our different shows, and it really means a lot. If you have any other keys you want to add, feel free to post But yeah, the one that I saw was just passing. Washington's passing game just absolutely crushing it. Meanwhile, Michigan's paths. So number one, the defense picking Penix off. That could be one.
Pick a couple of them off. You just need like two.
Couple of picks. JJ could, Blake Corum could go for 250 rushing yards, not just up the middle, but off the perimeter. Zone read, like read options. They do a lot of split zone, things like that. I could see Donovan Edwards getting in, and not just the run game, but the pass game as a slot receiver, having both of them on the field. That could be a thing. You've got Roman Wilson, who's your deep ball threat. CJ Cornelius Johnson, who's more of a 10, 12-yard threat, occasionally can be a deep yard threat, but he's more used as a shorter threat. And then, of course, you've got Colston Loveland, who JJ trusts implicitly. Those two are in lock. So when JJ throws, Colston catches, and Colston's bailed us out of a couple of situations that I thought were going to go and ended a punt on third down, and they ended in a first down. Colston's been really clutch throughout the game. So use of tight ends. Tyler Morris, unsung hero, made a huge play against Bama, and obviously Tyler Morris and JJ played together in high school. So those two have the chemistry in terms of receiver ability. So there are quite a few. Basically, like, contain Penix enough, keep him to like 300 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and then use your run game. Milk the clock a little bit. Use your run game, play action to tight ends, and occasional deep shot. I'm giving this to Michigan, a big surprise, 34-23, because of the fact that I only see one path for Washington. I see like 6 or 7 for Michigan. The difference in all of these different aspects to me is just too much. And they have a week to get to tune up the things that they messed up on last week. 34-23. Tony, what's your take on Michigan's keys, and then just kind of your predictions?
So I agree with you on the keys of the game. The keys of the game are going to be winning the turnover margin. The keys to the game is going to be, can Washington do it? Can Washington keep that magical pixie dust going to win? Because they could. But at the same time, Michigan is probably their worst nightmare in a team that is so good on defense and so good on offense, but not relying on explosives. Just, very much a pound the ball up the way and go. So, the question is, can they have that magic keep going? It's possible. It's very, very possible. I am not putting down any money on this game. And maybe I'm a homer. Maybe it's because Coach Carr gave my dad's induction speech into the Coaches Hall of Fame. Maybe it's because when they would want to talk to my dad about like Wisconsin's tight ends, they would put me on the recruit list in Michigan, and I would go and stand there like pretend to be a recruit. Coaches would talk to my dad about game strategy. But this is a national championship game, and sorry, dogs, but hail to Michigan, the champions of the West once again. If I had to make a pick, I would say Michigan 34, Washington 31. Go Blue.
All right. So in your case, Washington would cover. In my case, Michigan would cover. So if you're doing betting,
who knows? I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna see here, because again, Michigan's defense is so good. And again, Washington, they have that magic. Can they keep that magic going? If nobody come, I'm not putting a dime on this game, so nobody come back and say, "Oh, you were wrong." Because I would say, don't bet on this game. Just enjoy this game.
People are going nuts. Extremely happy at your prediction.
Hey, I grew up in Midland.
I think they were.
I want to thank. I want to thank Campus Corner. The Campus Corner store for serving, selling to me at like age 17. I want to thank the sangria place right by South Quad, who would sell like pictures of sangria to 16-year-old me. I appreciate that. So I can't pick against that.
And we got, Kickin' Chicken, go Blue. We always love Kickin' Chicken stopping by. Moose, friend of the program, mod, great guy. Follows recruiting. If you don't follow his Twitter, you should, because he gets into recruiting like few others. $5 super chat. John, the key is clock management. I don't think Wash can stop our run or pass game, and being on the sidelines is a disadvantage for Penix and Washington. Yeah,
huge
time of possession.
So again, that's what happened in the USC game. Is they just decided no one was actually. I think Washington made like 2 tackles, and so they won the game. Other than that, no tackles, just back and forth. 5-second drives, pretty much. And I don't think Michigan's going to do that. And that defense that leaves the opportunity to create turnovers, to stall, to stop. Again, which is why if I'm not betting on this game, I'm not making an official prediction. But if I had to, I think Michigan finds a way to make it happen.
Well, I am doing official prediction 34-23. Michigan is going to get it done.
Hail to Michigan. Hail. That also, by the way, was the very first real song I learned to play on the trumpet. Much to my mother's dismay, you had to hear it.
Just to make it official, we're going to make a banner. There it is. Okay, because that way nobody can.
I like
nobody
it.
Can go.
Nobody can question it. There.
Keep it on. So Tony, we always appreciate you stopping by and doing all the things with Voice of College Football that you do.
Always.
So as I do for everybody that I talk to, final thought, and where could people find you on the internet?
What a great season. My final thought is I'm excited because as of now, USC and UCLA and Washington and Oregon are in the Big Ten. Again, I grew up in Michigan. My dad played for Duffy. I think this is exciting and awesome. So you can find me. You guys just follow. You can find me on Twitter at TJ Altimore. Hit me up anytime, or here in the Voice of College Football community. Great to interact with you guys, and what a great season it's been, and looking forward to an even better one next year. Fight on.
Absolutely. Fight on. Go blue. All those things. Thanks.
By
the
way,
here,
next
Tony.
conference game. You know what the next conference game is for these two teams, right?
Is it each other? The
next conference game is USC at the Big House.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
How great is football, guys?
That's going to be amazing. That'll be one for the ages. Who knows? I mean, we may have like half a team, and then a bunch of freshmen. Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? So we'll see where we're all at in 2024. Let's just win the whole damn thing, and then we'll worry about 2024 after. But Tony, thanks for joining us for Michigan Wolverines Live, and thanks for coming by.
Fight on. We'll see you soon.
Later, Tony. So real quick, we're just gonna wrap up here. Do a couple of last comments. LBC Rob, thank you. Love you back. It's amazing. We of course have George here, who let's just say is not rooting for Michigan. But we appreciate you stopping by anyway to support us. Dependent Fanatic is here. Big Ten baby, absolutely. Jim R, really appreciate that. Yes, Tony is awesome. No question about that. He brings a lot of insight, and I wanted to, especially since he hosted the Pac-12 show this season, he's watched Washington really closely. I thought that was really glad he was able to join. Since I was unable to do Tuesday, that's why we have this show, which actually turned out to be pretty good. So, all right, everybody. As always, a reminder, on your way out, please hit the like button. I'm going to send everybody to the USC show now. So we've got the Conquest call-in show is happening right now. I'm going to put it right in the chat for everybody. No excuse. Go on over. Conquest call-in show. So they're taking callers. 888-99 Riley over there for the Conquest call-in show. And you can go and support that if you'd like to. Hit the like button, please, on here. Subscribe to Michigan football at the Voice of College Football. We are trying to beat Ohio State for subscribers. Okay? We're a little behind. So please, go ahead. Go right over to the Michigan channel and hit subscribe and hit the bell. Okay? Because the Michigan channel, we want to grow it. I have great ideas that Mark and I are in the lab, and we've got some really interesting ideas. We've got Dennis Fithian coming back on Tuesday night, so we've lined Dennis Fithian back up for the next show. Maize and Blue Review, a lot of you know him, so he'll be on our next Michigan Wolverines live show. I plan to do something for right after the game as well. Mark and I will sort that out. B-Bean, I posted it, but I'll post it one more time. Sub to Mish channel. There it is. So I put it in both chats. Put it in both chats for you. No surprise, Porter says there should be an asterisk next to whoever wins. Porter, we beat an SEC team. We beat the GOAT. So there you go. We beat the GOAT. And Texas is about to be an SEC team. So Washington beat them. So if Washington does beat Michigan, they beat Texas. Pretty good, right? Go Blue, Tom. Go Blue. Will ND. Great show as always, John. Will, thank you for coming by and supporting us. We really appreciate it. Okay, everybody. So one more time. The Conquest call-in show. Happening now. My voice held up almost the whole show with no issues, and now it's starting to hit. It's the still under the weather a bit, so forgive me. But here it is. Conquest call-in show, and I will see you guys Monday night after the game. And until next time, for everybody here at Voice of College Football, Michigan football at the Voice of College Football, I say to you all, go Blue, and let's have a great game, and let's go win the whole damn thing. Thanks, everybody.